Let's drill down a little bit further on need-based financial aid. As a refresher, that's the cost of attendance minus EFC equals need. And if our EFC is less than the cost of attendance at any given college, we could be eligible for need-based financial aid. Now let's further complicate matters. There's actually 3 different types of EFCs that any given college will use. That's the federal methodology, or FM, the institutional methodology, or IM, and the consensus methodology is CM. Most colleges, just about all public schools, there's some exceptions, and most private schools use the federal methodology. A couple things to point out here, and a couple big differences between that methodology and the other two. The biggest ones, in our opinion, is the fact that number one, the federal methodology does not consider home equity to be an asset in the equation. So when they're coming up with the EFC that they're assigning to your family, they're not even going to inquire, and we got to make sure we do not include, at least on the FAFSA, the amount of equity that we have in our primary residence. It does not come up at all, whereas it does at most colleges in the institutional and consensus methodologies. The other factor that we need to be aware of, if we are a 2-household family, if we are divorced or if we are separated, the federal methodology will only look at the income and assets, only look at the household of the custodial parent or parents. Now, if the custodial parent is remarried, they're also going to include that step-parent in the methodology. So those are 2 of the big differences that are unique to the federal methodology. The institutional methodology, as I alluded to, most of these colleges that fit in this category, and it's a lot of the more popular, the more competitive private colleges, they consider home equity fair game, for lack of a better term. If you own your home and you have any equity in it, that's going to be considered just like your checkings account, your savings account, your brokerage account, to varying degrees. There are some differences from one college to the next in terms of how much they actually consider your home equity. The consensus methodology, which tends to be, in short, the most competitive colleges from an admissions standpoint to get into, they're a little bit different from the institutional methodology in that a lot of them consider home equity, not all of them, but for the most part, they put less emphasis on that. And it's usually tied to the amount of household income in terms of how much they actually hold that against you. The other big difference is that both the public schools, the FM methodology, or most of them, and most of the IM schools, they put a lot of emphasis on any savings in the student's name. So if there is custodial accounts, UTMA or UGMA, any money in the student's name, these FM schools and these IM schools are going to put a lot of emphasis on the balances of those accounts, much more so than they will on the parents. Whereas the CM schools, the consensus methodology schools, they don't hold the money in the student's name against you with that same intensity that those other methodologies use. So very confusing here, but again, that's where we're going to have you rely on the technology. You don't have to know all of this. You have to plug your information into the platform, and we're going to tell you exactly how much aid or not these schools are going to give you. We're going to tell you what methodology that each of these colleges use. So again, you don't have to know all this, but just so you have the knowledge, we wanted to offer it.